All right. The graphics say that I am live, and I'll buy into that. Good evening, everybody. It's Robert Phoenix broadcasting to you again live from here inside the Hill Country, where the light is a little low, slightly purplish, and perhaps a little mysterious, all for effect. Thanks for hanging out and waiting for me to make my entrance here tonight. And going to try to sneak in about 90 minutes of solid astrology. Yeah, I got a little more of the purple haze kind of in effect here. Let's do that. There we go. All right. We're on the couch. Joan S. in the house. Wendy Quintana, what's happening, Wendy? Carrie Rose, hello, Carrie. Good to see you. Let's see, who else do we have here? People just starting to shuffle on in. Deanna M. Oh, great chat on Freeman. Thank you. Yeah, Freeman and I connected. It was a good one. Here's my man, Mike. What's going on? Fub77, Amanda Palmander, Frank Bride, the regular girls in the house. Hannah Stimson. Hello, Hannah. Good to see you. Oh, Ryan. What's happening, Ryan? The introspective woodworker is here. JMP Love, the purple one. Well, tonight you will enjoy the purple light that I have sort of radiating in the background. Megan Donovan, she's awake. We always knew that, but she happens to be up at this hour. Steve Mercer in the house. Thor by the door. What's going on? Mary Black. Good to see you. Faith's RV trip. Still listening to Freeman Fly. Looking forward to it. Yeah, it was a good show. Freeman and I were vibing. We were vibing. Maurice, what's going on? The ball has really dropped on Hunter Biden. Oh, yeah. We're going to talk about that. I was trying to find a conversation with Freeman yesterday. It's on Freeman TV. I'll just drop that in here so you guys can check it out. And it's called the Free Zone, if I'm not mistaken. So let's put a link in. Let's see what we got here. FreemanTV.com, right there, Freeman Fly. So everybody who's looking for the show, we did. We taped it on Thursday, and it went live yesterday. So there you go. FreemanTV.com. I lost my debit card, so I'm currently unsubscribed to Freeman, Emily, and Randy. Well, it's a good thing you weren't subscribed to me, because you'd be unsubscribed to me too. But you'll get it all back, and I'm sure they will at some point as well. Ani Brito in the house. Jane and Austin. What's going on, Jane? Good to see you. Let's see. That's maybe why Bannon and Trump parted ways. Wasn't that interesting? Orlando is bathed in purple tonight. So am I. Beth Cummings, what's going on, Beth? Good to see you. We are living in very interesting times. That's an understatement. Can't wait to see Hunter's chart. There's Nicholas Graham. What's going on, Nicholas? Lil's in the house. Let's see. Nice glasses. They're cheapos. I can't find my readers. Got to work on that. I was subscribed to you too. Oh, well, there you go. Darn it. Find that debit card then. Let's see. Microblue. Those be good. Good to see you, Microblue. Susie. What's happening, Susie? Charles Mazek. Hi, Charles. Elizabeth W. Double V. All right. Looks like we have a quorum. Do we have a quorum? I think we officially have a quorum. Well, there's a lot to get into, isn't there? There's Nancy Harding. Nice to see you, Nancy. Cat Moon for Hunter. That's right. My dad wore glasses like that. They're kind of dad glasses, aren't they? Yeah. They're one of my many readers that are not prescription. Purchased a helping hand. I saw that. I'm going to get back to you, Miss Christine Hughes. Let's see, 82 in the room. That's good. You got 82 happening. And let's see, Revital Sun in the house. Hunter is now the hunted. Sounds very cute-like, doesn't it? Hunter's on it. Kind of wondering how the last debate will go. How did the new moon treat everyone? Oh, pretty well here. Turning 50 this year. 50 was a good birthday. I like 50. 50 was good. I'll never forget my father saying, you know, the 50s can be really good. Don't underestimate the 50s. He said 60s, then he said 70s, forget it. He was like, yeah, I'm kind of over the 70s. But at that time, he was in his 70s. He was having a bit of a difficult time. Okay. Where is Hunter? Oh, no, Hunter is 50. Oh, I see. Right. Fred McMurray glasses. I need my Fred McMurray pipe. My Three Sons. You guys probably don't remember My Three Sons. I always thought it was bizarre how Ernie came into their life. Like, what was his name? Charles Martin Smith, the guy with the glasses. I think his parents like abandoned him, and then Fred McMurray adopted him to be with the rest of the boys on My Three Sons. I always thought that was strange. I remember I was watching that show. I'm like, wow, that's really sad. They left him behind, but he's in a good family now. So I guess it's okay. Fred Murray, I think, is in Double Indemnity, if I'm not mistaken. Coach K, what's happening? Kathy Warner Leap is here. Let's see. What else we got going? Oh, yeah, remember your interview on the Friday forecast with Robert. Susan, hi, Susan. Nice to see you. Renee is here. Let's see. The Crimmies. Boy, have things turned around since. Oh, look who's here. It's Jimmy Sunshine. Jimmy Sunshine in the house. My nickname was in high school was Ernie. That was his name, right? Ernie. My Three Sons. All right. Uncle Charlie, played by William Demarest. Jasper, he is in, man. The astrological cat is back, lending his leonine wisdom straight from the Lyran star system. That's right. That's right. Was Barbara Marciniak said that cats are like cameras, and that the cats, this is what the Pleiadians say, that all cats are like cameras, and they're transmitting back to their home planet, their home star system. Jasper, you're like doing double duty, man. Let's see. I am being shadow banned. Well, I guess it's better than I'm still here, by the way. The purge has taken place. on YouTube, and Freeman and I talked about that a lot on his show, and how there are parallels to the Knights Templar and the Cathars, and the purge of the Knights Templar and the Cathars on October 13th, 1307, Friday the 13th. And it was right around Friday the 14th, they went in and basically set YouTube on fire. And, you know, there were a number of pretty well-known channels that got cut. And there were a lot of eyeballs associated with those channels. I'm sure if I went through and added up all the aggregate subscribers and views, it would be quite significant. The Amazing Polly, of course, kind of at the top of the list there, at the top of the pyramid. X22, SGT Report, Jordan Sather, Praying Medic, some people that I was not aware of, because it seems as though the majority of the purge came through the kind of the Q portal, and that's where the similarities between like the Cathars and the Gnostics and this whole Friday the 13th, and Q being almost like a secret society unto itself, which of course the Knights Templar really were at the time, morphing into the Freemasons not long after that. So it's an interesting parallel in time. Another day on Friday, well, it was the 13th of October, is the day that the B'nai B'rith, much later, of course, was started. And the B'nai B'rith is really a Jewish Masonic lodge. So it's quite interesting that they would take October 13th to use that as their inaugural day. Again, much later than 1307. So the things that all those channels had in common, I think, is that they were Q channels and they were quote unquote patriot channels. And I talked a little bit about this on Friday, and that it was almost like they knew that this was coming. And they've known that Trump has been in possession of the laptop and or the laptops, perhaps more than one, for a while. And it was just a matter of time before the Trump administration would begin to release the information. And they had already gone out about a week before, and Congress passed a resolution that denounced Q. And once that happened, I'm not saying that it opened up the legal floodgates, but clearly there was a majority inside the House. I don't think it went to the Senate. I think the House just had a memorandum. They didn't, you know, it wasn't like there was voting on a bill. They just basically said, we denounce Q. But it's not stopping at Q. They're going to go after conspiracy theorists, right? They're going to go after the broader spectrum of what we would call so-called truth channels. So ultimately, no channel is really safe. And I think we all, you know, first they came for Alex, and then they came for this person and that person, and then they came for Polly, and then they came for Jasper. No, I'm just kidding. But this is, I think, planned so that when the Biden material would come out, that they would have choke points, and people like Polly, people like Jordan Sather or Praying Medic, and even on Facebook, where they just started wiping out all these Q pages on Facebook, that they were not going to be allowed to share the information. That they weren't going to be allowed to do that. So that was, I think, strategic on their part. Like they were going to get rid of the choke points before the information was dropped. Now it'll be interesting to see how and where the information is shared and whether it really makes a difference. You know, will people who are on the Biden fence all of a sudden see this information and say, oh, geez, look at that, I can't vote for him? I don't really think that that's the case. I think that there is another game being played. And I think Trump and his team are slow playing everything, right? They don't want to bring too much out too quickly. I don't think they want to do that. And I think that's got to be agonizing for both the Democrats and Joe Biden and his team. I don't think they want to do it and just go bleh, right? So they're gonna string this thing out. And ultimately, I'm not even sure if Joe Biden is really the main target here. I think the main target will wind up being probably the Democratic Party in general and China. I think that's really what they want to do. I think that's the goal, that they want to establish a chain of corruption through China with the Democratic Party. So this is this is not like a sniper hit on the two Bidens. What we're looking at ultimately, I think, is a controlled demolition. That's what I think we're looking at. So that as they get close to the election, it'll be very ugly. And there's probably a very good chance that there will be enough links that will begin to come up and people will begin to pop. Like Hunter Biden's business partner has decided to, basically spill the beans. So I believe he's given the DOJ access to all of his Gmail accounts, which is kind of funny because if they wanted to, they could get the Gmail stuff. That wouldn't be that hard. But now there is consent and now there is complicity. So it's not just the laptops that they're going to be deriving information from, but they're going to get information and corroboration from Hunter Biden's business partner. And that can be totally damning. Really, really damning. And then we don't know where it goes from there. Is it really just the Bidens that are getting a little piece of the action? I would say absolutely not. And I'll give you an example. So back when Hillary was running for president the first time, and she was in the Democratic primary race against Barack Obama, one of the things that Bill Clinton did was that Bill Clinton apparently did a business deal with China. And you would think that the amount of money was kind of chumpy changey. It's somewhere between $6 and $13 million, if my memory serves me. But he didn't cut people in. He didn't cut certain people in on the deal. And the punishment was that Hillary was not going to be elected president. Like they were going to throw their resources behind Obama. That's what was going to happen. So these people have a real petty sense of making sure that they get a piece of the action. And if that's true, then I guarantee you that it won't just be Joe and Hunter, that there will be other connections and they'll be able to track those connections. If indeed that's the case. And this is the nuclear time bomb of the October surprise. It could get very ugly. Now, the other side of that has to do with the fact that if you're a wounded animal, you will do everything in your power in order to stay alive. So what would the so-called opposition or the Democratic Party do in order to deflect or move the conversation or the narrative away from what's being uncovered? That remains to be seen. And with a Mercury retrograde and a Mars retrograde going on, there's a lot in play, a whole lot in play. So I think potentially they're going for the kill shot. They're going to go for the kill shot because, let's say, for instance, because I don't think people are going to be swayed by the vote. I don't think people are going to be swayed by the information. People made up their minds, like, I'm going to vote for Biden no matter what. I hate Trump, or I'm going to vote for Trump no matter what. And I think the numbers for Trump are quite big, actually. And if it was a regular election, that he would probably take Joe Biden out to the woodshed. I mean, nobody goes to Biden's rallies. I did a show earlier today with Jimmy Brent, and that'll be on his YouTube channel tonight or tomorrow. And apparently Biden was in where was he? Was he in Nevada? And like there was nobody there. We know that there was nobody there in Arizona. It was Arizona. Trump, I think, is in Nevada tonight. And Trump rallies, of course, are off the charts. So if the rallies are any indication of the numbers, I mean, it's not even close. So the other side will have to resort to extreme measures in order to bring Biden into the presidency. And we haven't even talked about Kamala Harris and what all this means. So one of the scenarios that can be played out, let's say nothing happens between now and election day as it relates to what we're witnessing. And let's say somehow Biden miraculously pulls off. When the corruption stuff will not go away. It will follow him into office. And because that's what happened with Nixon. They were all trying to get to Nixon, because he was running for re-election, and that's when he deployed the plumbers to the Watergate Hotel to listen in on his Democratic rivals, and they were actually able to use that information to then impeach Nixon not long after that. So this would be available for the Republicans to use against Biden if he should somehow win. And knowing that, then Biden would probably step down very quickly. And then we would have President Harris. So I don't think that we really want President Harris. I don't think that's really going to be in our or anybody's best interest. But also, I will say, I looked at her chart, and she's got that super conjunction happening on her Saturn, which is conjunct her midheaven. So you don't want Kamala Harris in office. And one of the reasons why you don't want her in office is because I think that if they do indeed pack the court, that they could change the term limits for president with a packed Supreme Court. I think there would have to be some finagling and wrangling, but if they have the House and they have the Senate and they can pack the court, theoretically, you could have Kamala Harris as president for 12 years. And I think that's a distinct possibility with Saturn on her midheaven. That's longevity. That's all that. And so people have to be aware of the ramifications, especially the ramifications of a completely controlled House, Senate, and judiciary. It could be beyond troubling. It would change the tabula rasa of how this country has been ruled and governed. And I don't think for the better. And that's not to say that I wouldn't be up for change, but I don't think it would be for the better. So just keep that in mind with her chart, because the super conjunction happens on her Saturn. And if I was an astrologer, which I am, and they hired me to find a candidate that would be the most suitable and appropriate candidate for the potential of stepping in and being and taking over for Joe Biden as president, it would be Kamala Harris, just based on her chart alone. We've looked at that. So they have to go in and basically use this as a controlled demolition of not just the Bidens, but the entire party and the entire party's relationship with China. And that would be probably the best use of whatever it is that they have at their disposal. And they might be able to get down to a certain level of corruption that has been related to China for a very long time. The Clintons were up to their eyeballs in corruption with China, and it all started with deals, doing deals with China and trade secrets and giving them most favored nation status and allowing them to get into the ports of this country like Long Beach. And it's just continued, and they were given these economic, free zones that they have all around the country. And China has these economic sort of free zones where they don't have to pay any taxes. They get to have, their Smithfield ham or whatever kinds of businesses they set up. So there's been a lot going on with China. And apparently with the Chinese, that if you take money from them, like the Bidens have done, apparently, they also have to have dirt on you. And one of the things that's come up on Hunter Biden's laptop is a number of images with clearly underage Chinese girls. And the guy that runs the child trafficking department inside of the FBI, a guy by the name of Josh Wilson, is now been assigned to Hunter Biden's case. So this could get very ugly. And every day now, you're going to see more stuff being kind of uncoiled. And we're coming very close to Halloween, the blue moon, the Uranus conjunction with the moon. We talked about that last week. And again, also with Mars retrograde, and we talked about that last week and how that was going to come into play, and that Obama would be connected to it. And sure enough, a lot of the Benghazi material is starting to surface. So now they've got this double barrel shotgun that they've pretty much loaded up. And Steve Bannon is crowing like a rooster in the morning. He knows what they've got, and he is very confident about whatever it is that they have and will be able to deliver. So if I was a Democrat or a progressive and I really was bolted into that ideology, I would be concerned. Not just because of your candidate, but because of, what is underneath the surface of everything and where this thing could potentially really go and blow. All right, so we'll talk about this astrologically with Hunter Biden's chart. So why don't we do our little invocation and prayer here? We're going to change it up just a little bit. Dear blessed Holy Mother, Father God, within the universal light, which is the light of the great central sun, the light of Yeshua Sananda Emmanuel, we ask that only the highest and best wisdom and information come through this channel at this time, and that we're all blessed and graced by the virtues and qualities of character and commitment and fortitude, wisdom, intelligence, strength, courage, creativity, abundance, discernment, transformation. A little transformation tonight. Intellect empathy, compassion, and above all, love. We ask that any karmic residue be cleansed, purified, clarified, and removed from the stream. And with that, let's get cracking. All right, so what I want to do first is, why don't we take a peek at Hunter Biden's chart? Let's do that. And Jasper's getting involved. Jasper's got to get involved. Okay, so I don't know Hunter Biden's birth time, but I do think he could be a double Aquarius. And I'll try to lay out a path for that and show you why I think that would actually be the case. So here we go. We got true node, ascending node, 6 stars. And let's do this. All right, and we'll throw some transits in there. Okay. And we'll screen shareage, and we will be complete. Here we go. All right. So that's his chart. Now, again, I gave him a sunrise chart, which would make him a double Aquarius, but it kind of fits in some ways, and I'll tell you why. Because he has Jupiter in Scorpio in the 9th house. And, Jupiter is other people's, Scorpio is other people's money, other people's resources. 9th house, foreign countries. So I thought, this could fit. This could fit. Pluto, Uranus, 8th house, again, hidden beneath the floorboards. In Libra, Uranus and Libra, of course, contracts. And Pluto at 27 Virgo, right there at the end of Virgo, also in the 9th house and other people's. Dinero as well. Now, he does have that Sun-Venus conjunction and a fair amount of Uranus here, starting with Pallas at 10 and ending with Juno at 19. And Aquarius is a sign that is very unpredictable at times. And this, it does not always play by the rules. I mean, that's the nature of Aquarius. And there's good aspects of that. And there's can also be challenging aspects. And I love it when Aquarius or an Aquarian is, how do I say this, duly and consciously aligned in the contrarian mode. So I just recently saw an interview with Johnny Lydon of the Sex Pistols, Johnny Rotten, who's an Aquarian, and he's totally backing Trump. I mean, it's not that he loves Trump, but he sees that Joe Biden is borderline feeble and incapable of running the country. And so his wife, whom he's been married to for quite a while, has Alzheimer's. I think she's older than him, and if I'm not mistaken, she's German. She was quite wealthy. But, I'm not saying that they didn't love each other. I didn't say that he married her because she was rich. But he says that he recognizes Biden's symptoms because of his wife. So he just came right out and said, yeah, I think Trump's better, and I'm going to vote for Trump. And he took a lot of slag for that because he's supposed to be, Johnny Lydon and a punk rocker. And Trump is probably more of a punk or a punk rocker than Biden ever was or will be. Trump has a Sun-Uranus conjunction, which makes him very Aquarian or very Uranian in his approach to things. So, of course, Lydon would be aligned with that. I saw a very interesting interview with him with Piers Morgan from a few years back. I believe it was Piers Morgan. And right after the Sex Pistols hit, Johnny Lydon was talking about Jimmy Savile and what Jimmy Savile was up to. He was really on board. He saw what was going on with Savile and sort of the music scene. He talked about it, and nobody listened to him. So he is, in my mind, kind of aligned with the contrarian aspect, the Aquarian contrarian, and aligned in a way that is, I don't use the word appropriate, but it fits. It fits. And that's the good side of Aquarius, right? It can turn things over. It can show us different ways of looking at the world or seeing the world through a different perspective, and one that can be contrarian. But we also see with Aquarius that it is prone to a bit of chaos as well, because Uranus is the ruler. And what's interesting about Hunter Biden in his chart is that, he's flown all over the world. He's had all these meetings and all these deals set up primarily through his father. He went to a proper school in Georgetown. So he has all these kind of bona fides that the world would look at and say, oh, wow, he's legitimate, right? He's legitimate. So he's living this life that has to do with making deals and getting agreements and disbursements and shares and all those things, which, by the way, is not uncommon. Like, this is what people do, and people in power do this, and people in power and influence do this. It's very Capricornian, and we see that he has a moon Mercury conjunction in Capricorn, and almost exact. Look how tight that is. We'll talk about that. But if he's doing something that looks, for all intents and purposes, on the surface like it's legitimate, and he's got a career and he's being promoted in these very Capricornian kinds of ways, where does the Aquarian nature surface in a situation like that? It surfaces in self-destruction. That's how it surfaces, because he is engaged in this Capricornian kind of life, and even dealing with Saturn, who represents the father, right? He's doing these deals in conjunction with his father, and Saturn is the father. So it's very, even though it is clearly outside the lines, and it looks, for all intents and purposes, like what other people would be doing in terms of how they would fly around the world and do business and get these things set up. But he can't do that, because that's not what Aquarius, ultimately they will self-destruct. And we've seen him in moments already with like controlled demolition in his chart. Like the affair with the stripper that he got pregnant, or the affair with Beau Biden's widow. I mean, so even within the context of being very Capricornian, he's been kind of imploding along the way. Because if Aquarius can't be contrary, like the best thing that he could have ever done was to do something completely different than work with his father and fly around the world and be the recipient or the bag man for these deals, because he's doing what his father did. And he's literally like following his father's footsteps, and even paying his father money, cutting his father in. Apparently, that's what his father demanded. He needed to do something else, because what this resulted in ultimately is what we're seeing now, which is the complete implosion, and to some degree, even the betrayal of the father. I think he has a very difficult time with impulse control. He's got Jupiter in Scorpio. Again, we see it ninth house, other countries, right, foreign countries, other people's money. And we see the square. It's a wide square, but we see a wide square to the sun. And that's overdoing something. when you get Jupiter squares, you can overdo things. There can be an overabundance of confidence. And we know that his father is a Scorpio, and he's leaned on his father many times. His father's leaned on him as well. But this, to me, this is the. So I would say this is almost like the tabula rasa of his chart. This square from Jupiter, in the ninth house, which I think could be a good placement for Jupiter based on what we know, and then the square to the sun. And then ultimately he would overdo it to a point where this kind of Uranian implosion would eventually occur and take place. So I think that's the biggest takeaway from this Jupiter square. That's number one. Number two, we have the inconjunct with Jupiter to both Chiron and with Mars. So how I would define this with Hunter Biden is that there would be, I think, a very difficult time for him to prove himself, because Mars is wounded here with Chiron. And whatever happened to Hunter Biden around 3 years old tells the story. Like if we were to sit down with Hunter Biden, and if he had any kind of premonition or recollection around what happened to him at 3, I think we would have a better understanding as to what drives him psychologically. And guess what? He's going through his Chiron return. And the Chiron return is a pretty big deal if you haven't reconciled where Chiron is in your life. So when you're really young like that, you have your Chiron at an early degree. A lot of that is, and especially in a family like his and what we know about how the elites kind of run their game. I mean, to me, this would be very much representative of being violated, especially when we get into the opposition of Pluto here, right? To me, this is heavy duty energy. And in most charts, you'll see a Uranus opposition to Chiron. It's the way it is. But you won't always see a Pluto opposition to Chiron. And I know that I have it in the 8th house here, but Pluto here is in Virgo. And Pluto Virgo has to do on a collective level with trying to purify things, right? Trying to purify something. And when Pluto was in Virgo, starting really in the late 1950s and all the way up through what was 1971, right? 1972. That's when the ecological movement was really kind of born during that time. The ecological movement in the United States took root with Pluto and Virgo. And there's this famous scene from a commercial where there's this great Indian chief, and he's paddling his canoe down the river, and there's trash everywhere. And then there's this close-up of him crying. Right? There's this tear coming. It was a famous public service announcement from the 60s. And in a lot of ways, it typifies kind of that energy that took place with Pluto and Virgo. Going to be ecologically aware. This is when people started talking about LA and smog. And of course, it is the beginning of emission control with engines in Detroit. So there's this call for purification with Pluto and Virgo, and he has it retrograde in his chart. So what we see here is that there would be actions, both with Uranus and Pluto, that would be retrograde in nature, and that they would come back to him at some point in the future. And I think we're seeing that now, especially under this Mercury retrograde, with the idea, and I floated this on Friday's show, that, that of course, leaving your laptop at a place that's going to fix it, supposedly, and not getting it is druggy behavior. And it is the same kind of behavior that people who storage sheds and store a bunch of stuff, and they blow all their money on drugs, and they can't afford their storage shed, and they lose them. What are you doing, Jasper? Jasper's trying to really get into the matrix here of the TV, of the computer. Dude, you can't do it. Jasper's really trying to insert himself into the show tonight. Look, is it the purple light? Is that what's freaking you out? Just come back over here. You're doing fine. You're doing fine there. Should I show you? Should I show everybody? Do you want to be there? Here we go. Is that what you need? Right there. All right. So the idea that I floated was that Hunter Biden's future self set all this up so that he could essentially like kill his father. I mean, I'm not sure that that's exactly what he's trying to do, but it's pretty much what's happening. And he doesn't have a Mars-Pluto opposition, but he does have this Mars-Chiron conjunction. And to me, it is a feeling of like helplessness and being wounded. And he's going through his Chiron return. So whatever happened to him at 3 years old, whatever has driven him beyond being spoiled and pampered and enabled, there's something deeper here. And this is what's coming up. And especially with the Mars retrograde. So Mars will not go back in retrograde opposite Uranus in his chart. That's not going to happen. But we do see Mars squaring his natal moon and his natal Mercury, both in the sign of Capricorn conjunct. Now, what's interesting about the Mercury-Moon conjunction is that it usually creates the ability to be both intuitive and have a pretty good memory. So you would think that somebody who has a Mercury-Moon conjunction would remember the fact that they left their laptop with very sensitive information in a place where it was being repaired. However, that's not the case. And that's why I think there's this kind of, how do I say this? This soul conspiracy that's going on with Hunter Biden right now. So we do have the square, the Mars retrograde square to Mercury, which is information, and the moon, which has to do with your family tradition, of course, being ruled by Capricorn, and Capricorn being the scion, the son, and be the relationship to the father, the scion being the relationship to the father. So this is interesting for the retrograde piece. And again, because I thought that this could actually work in terms of a rectified chart with Neptune on the midheaven, it would give him sort of easy access, especially in Sagittarius, to just kind of float around, right? He's here, he's here, he's here, he's here. He's like the Where's Waldo? Oh, he's in China. Oh, he's in a homeless encampment in LA smoking crack. Oh, he's in Ukraine. But really, I think that the path that he followed, even though ultimately I believe it will lead to his obliteration, which may not be a bad thing, was ultimately not a path that I think he should have followed. He's got a very creative chart in some ways. He's got a Mars trine to Neptune, and by and large, this is indicative of a fair amount of creativity and even imagination. He also has Sun-Venus conjunct, which can be connected to aesthetics, and a trine to Uranus, which in the right direction could be very innovative and find new ways to maybe make money in the eighth house. We know he's found that. But he has more of a, I would say, an artistic or a creative chart than I would say a big business chart, with the exception of the moon here and Mercury in a very, very wide trine with Pluto. So we're talking, 8 degrees, pretty wide trine. And that's where the need for money comes in, and easy in a lot of ways. When you have that trine, pretty easy, and dealing with people at a Capricornian level. So he was born into that, and that's certainly a makeup of his chart. he's been able to gobble up lots of resources, haven't he? Hasn't he? But I really feel like that this is a chart of perhaps a creative person, and that he, in some ways, missed his mark. Even and I don't know if he has any creative ability, but I think following his father's footsteps would ultimately lead to the self-destruction vis-a-vis Uranus. That's my sense, because he tried to fit into a particular mold, and as a result of that, it turned Uranian in a very how do I say this, self-destructive way. He does have a Saturn-Jupiter opposition, and he has Saturn in Taurus, and as far as elements go, pretty well distributed. Jupiter, let's just say Jupiter, true node. We know he has Ceres all in water. That's not too bad. He's got a fair amount of Earth. And then he has a lot of fire, Mars, Chiron, which is debilitated, and then Neptune. But he really is probably more aligned with the air elements in his chart, especially with the Jupiter square, because it exacerbates it. It makes everything bigger. So, but he would ricochet between, and what's interesting is that he always seems to be broke. Even though he's going around and doing all these deals, he always seems to be broke. And to me, that would be this Jupiter-Saturn opposition. Like at one point, there would be a lot of resources, and then at another point, there would be like very little, and there's not a lot of resolution here. We have the square with Jupiter to the sun, which is more, whether it's drugs or women or money. This is what that square is about. And then the Saturn-Jupiter opposition. And again, if we see the Saturn as the father, right? And Jupiter here is trying to expand and kind of break free, but the father is kind of reeling Jupiter back in. It's like, I want my share. But again, with the true node in Pisces, that's more kind of creative and, slightly more, spiritual and soulful. And Virgo, is connected to service and work and things like that. And again, I feel like he probably, I'm not saying that he would have been a great artist, but I think it would have been better if he had chosen a creative path where Uranus becomes an ally versus a destructive force, which ultimately it does become with the opposition to Mars. So it's an interesting chart, and but again, ultimately, I think a chart that is really more geared towards doing something other than what he's been doing. Because in some ways, and when I say this, right, he tried to play it straight. And what I mean by that is that on the surface, it looked like Hunter Biden was doing something respectable. And something, by the way, that is not dissimilar than what other people do, whether it's lobbyists for corporations or people that are connected to any one of these, syndicate families, whether it's the Biden family or the Clinton family or even the Trump family or the Bush family. They do these things. They do these things. It's just, it looks, on the surface, it looks respectable. It looks like it's, a gig that, oh yeah, consultant, member of the board, all these Capricornian things. But that was his death knell in some ways, because he couldn't allow for the Aquarian or the Uranian spirit to really breathe and have chaos be a creative force versus ultimately a destructive one. And that's really what we're witnessing right now. And Pluto is retrograding. It's very close to his natal Mercury and natal Moon. So it's things pop up, right? It's like, hey, look, all these things that you thought were dead and buried, well, guess what? They're getting resurrected at this point in time. Let me bring in the synastry between him and his dad. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to flip this. I'm going to put Hunter Biden, and then we're going to put Joe Biden right there, and we're going to go synastry right here, and let's see what we've got. Okay. So I'm just using sort of the basic planetary alignments. I'm putting any like asteroids or fixed stars or anything. So we're just looking at really where the main planets are. And the first thing that really grabbed my attention is his Neptune, which is right on Biden's Venus and Mercury and Sun. And I think that at some point, and obviously I think we've reached that point, that would play a pretty significant role. Because when we look at Neptune, the outer planets have kind of this fatalistic quality to them. And Neptune would at times be related to things like ruin and the reversal of personal fortune, and especially playing a role with an individual and their public image. Like if you go through a Neptune crisis at a certain point in your life, let's say Neptune going through your 10th house and your sun is there, or Neptune crossing your sun, it could be a very vulnerable time. And, you can have things, become very challenging in a lot of ways. And a very good friend of the show has had this Neptune conjunction on her sun, close to her sun, and wound up actually having some very dear kind of personal tragedy and losing one of her children. So there tends to be some traction when it comes to these things. But that said, there's also other kinds of potentialities. And there's also the redemptive quality of like a Neptune transit. But the redemptive quality of a Neptune transit doesn't always occur until after a fall and after an individual has washed out. And here we have this Neptune transit crossing Joe Biden's Venus, which is resources and money, relationships, his sun, and in the 12th house, which is, behind the scenes. So this is really a very critical, very, very critical aspect to the synastry of this chart. And we can also see on the other side where Joe Biden has Saturn in the sign of Gemini, and Hunter Biden has Neptune in the sign of Aquarius. And even though it's 8 degrees, that's 9 degrees, that's still an opposition. And Saturn is where, in the 7th house, is where Joe Biden does his deals, right? The 7th house is relationship and contracts. And guess what? Hunter Biden's sun is in opposition to his Saturn. And I also feel like it's really interesting that, Burisma is an energy company, and an energy company that's connected to oil and gas. And Neptune does represent oil and gas. So here we go, right? That's another layer of this very interesting tale of father and son. This could almost be archetypal in some ways. And it is, because if you look at, here, I'll show you. Let's do this. So we're just going to step away from the chart, just that chart, just for a moment, because I want to show you how this is getting played out. I mean, what we're witnessing is this mythopoesis, right? These are mythological energies that are being played out right before our very eyes. So let me go back and I'll show you the what I'm talking about here. So we're going to look at the story of Kronos, right? Kronos and Uranus. And Kronos is really connected to Saturn. He's a Saturnian figure. Here we see the scythe or the sickle, and we've seen that associated at times with Capricorn and time. So Uranus and Gaia are the parents of Kronos. So Kronos envied the power of his father, the ruler of the universe, Uranus, which is interesting because with the myth has been a bit inverted, right? That Saturn is the father, but here in this cosmogony, Uranus is the father, right? And Kronos' mother is Gaia. So only Kronos is willing to do the deed. And so what he's going to do is, he's going to castrate Uranus. This is what happens. So what we're seeing here is this interesting inversion with Kronos and Uranus and the two Bidens. And who's playing what role, right? Who is playing what role, and at what role do they switch off? What happened when Hunter Biden was 3 years old and had to deal with the kairotic crisis, which is the dance between Saturn and Uranus in the chart. I keep reading this. All right, only Kronos is willing to do the deed. So Gaia gave him a sickle and placed him to ambush. When Uranus met with Gaia, Kronos attacked him with the sickle, castrating him and casting his testicles into the sea. From the blood that spilled out from Uranus and fell upon the earth, the Gigantes, the Uranians, and the Meliae were produced. The testicles produced a white foam from which the goddess Aphrodite emerged. For this, Uranus threatened vengeance and called his sons Titines for overstepping their boundaries. After dispatching Uranus, Kronos re-imprisoned the Hecaton Kairos and the Cyclopes, set the dragon Campe to guard them. He and his older sister Rhea took the throne of the world, and as king and queen, right? So Saturn becomes the father now. Kronos becomes the father, right? Kronos castrates Uranus to become the father and the king. Kronos learned from Gaia and Uranus that he was destined to be overcome by his own sons, just as he had overthrown his father. As a result, although he sired the gods Demeter, Hestia, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon by Rhea, he devoured them as soon as they were born to prevent the prophecy. When the sixth child Zeus was born, Rhea sought Gaia to devise a plan to save them, to eventually get retribution for Kronos for his acts against his father and children. Rhea secretly gave birth to Zeus in Crete and handed Kronos a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes, known as the Omphalos stone, which he promptly swallowed, thinking that it was his son. Rhea kept Zeus hidden in a cave on Mount Ida, Crete. According to some versions of the story, he was then raised by a goat named Amalthea, while a company of Curetes, armored male dancers, shouted and clapped their hands to make enough noise to mask the baby's cries from Kronos. So essentially what we're seeing here is this tale of the son eating the father, and then eventually he finds his fate, right? He is the one who becomes the castrated, or the one that is cast out. So this is quite interesting because Cronus was said to be the father of the wise centaur, Chiron, by the Oceanian Philyra, who was subsequently transformed into a linden tree. The Titan chased the nymph and consorted with her in the shape of a stallion, hence the half-human and half-equine shape of their offspring. This was said to have taken place on Mount Pelion. Two other sons of Cronos and Philyra may have been Dolops and Aphros, the ancestor and eponym of Afroi, the native Africans. How about that? So eventually, Cronos meets his fate, right? He meets his fate. And it is the tale of the father, the son castrating the father, and then the father eventually wound up being castrated by the son. So what's interesting, and we'll bring it back to the chart here, is that in the astrological world, we have the sun who is ruled by Uranus or Uranos, and he in effect now is castrating his father. This is what's happening because of what's been found. And even in Joe Biden's chart, we can see Saturn and Uranus, right, in conjunction with one another. 9 Gemini and 2 Gemini. So the two deities in question are sharing literally the same localized space in this chart. And that at some point in time, there would be the dissolving of these two entities in this chart, and it's through Neptune. And Neptune often would be also associated with betrayal. You know, when we think of Neptune, we think of betrayal, we think of Piscean age, we think of the scapegoat, and it's playing a pretty significant role here now. What's interesting is that his Neptune is quite early. When I say he, I'm talking about Hunter. It's at 0 Sagittarius. So the only thing we have in Sagittarius is the South Node. And the South Node has not quite moved into this position, right? So if we were to look at the South Node, it really would be in Joe Biden's first house, which is kind of interesting because that's where he is vulnerable and weak. It's his identity. And his contracts over here with the true node of Gemini, again, clearly, just distinctly from a, here, we'll go to his chart. We'll just do a pure Biden chart, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's do. Just gonna throw this stuff in there, and you'll see what I'm referring to. So here we have the debilitation of the self. So he's weak here, he's strong over here in contracts, and at least for now, or at least on the surface. On the surface he is. But obviously there's a hell of a lot more going on, like the Mercury retrograde going through his 12th house, hitting his Mars. It'll be, I think, interesting over the next, say, 72 hours when we have this moon in Sagittarius that will move into his first house. So I would say by Wednesday, and it's kind of, so this does not bode well for him in the debate. If I was his people, I'd keep him as far away from the debate as possible. Oh, you can't see the chart. Okay, my bad. So when I change the chart, apparently something stopped. Here, let me show you guys. Here, my apologies. Let's go to the chart. I feel like the czar, the telestrator. Okay, so it's right here. So here's where Mercury is. This is where the retrograde started, right on his Mars. It's sort of like you're digging out the secrets of the 12th house right here. That's right where it started. And it's going to continue to move through his 11th house, which is the house of social media. And this does not bode well for Joe Biden. And this moon, which is currently in Scorpio, and he's, I think, put a lid on things till Thursday. Thursday is when this debate is supposed to happen. And I think right around that time, the moon will either be void of course. It might be in Capricorn by Thursday, but there's a lot of ground to cover here with the moon between now and Thursday. And I think the big day will be Wednesday, when we have the moon in his first house conjuncting his south node. I think that's going to be problematic. That's going to be very problematic because, again, we're dealing with these foreign entities, these foreign countries. And he's made a lot of money working with foreign companies and foreign countries. True node in the ninth house, right, conjunct Regulus. It's where he's really made his dough. And he has Chiron here as well in Leo. And I think Biden's got issues with his Chiron. This is the man who would want to be king, right? He'd want to be king, but he can't be king for any number of reasons. He's not qualified. Astrologically, he's not qualified. He's more qualified to do what he's been doing most of his life, which is to be behind the scenes. And this is the third time he's run for president. And the first time he ran for president, he was caught plagiarizing a speech from somebody who had written a speech in where? England, ninth house, hello. So he would be much better at being more helpful and of service. But this is a chart in a lot of ways that is kind of doomed, right? This is a doomy kind of chart with the square to the sun. And it's a very self-destructive aspect. And it looks like his sun is bringing on the self-destruction. That's how I would, classify this. And he has Neptune conjunct his fourth house, right? So it would make a lot of sense that he would duck out with Neptune in his fourth house. Now, and a lot of it has to do with his age, because obviously he's older. And when you're 70 plus and Neptune's going through your fourth house, it's a lot different than, say, when you're 30 and Neptune is going through your fourth house. So when they say he's hiding in his basement, I mean, clearly that's Neptune in his fourth house, convalescing. So I think this week is going to be quite interesting, to say the least. And I think Tuesday, Wednesday is the day when the moon comes into his first house and conjuncts this transiting south node. I think that's when things get really, really bad for Joe Biden. Like there's like going to be no way to kind of parse these things that are going to come out. There's no way that they can. There's no way that they're going to be able to parse them. So it's going to be interesting. That's for damn sure. And the other thing too is Jupiter is now coming into opposition with his natal Jupiter. He's made a lot of money off of other people with Jupiter in the 8th house. I mean, that's a classic, especially Pluto there. He's made a ton of money off of other people. Look at that. And Pluto's even been his friend, right? Trining his ascendant, trining Venus. That's wealth. But he's going to have to pay the piper. And he's going to have Saturn opposing Pluto in the first quarter of 2021. And that, to me, he can't make it past that. He cannot make it past that. And I'll go on record and say that Joe Biden, whether it's real or whether it's scripted, he's written out of the story. He will be written out of the story by January, end of January, middle of February at the latest. He'll be written out of the story. He could theoretically pass away. They could say that he's suffered a stroke, and this isn't even if he's president, by the way. Like, this is not even if he's president. I mean, let's say all this unfolds and somehow Trump maintains this thing and we move forward into great uncertainty. You won't see Joe Biden. You will not see him. He'll do it. There will be a Kenneth Lay of Enron moment. And I just don't see him I don't see him making it past Jennifer. And I could be wrong. They could do a lot of stuff with deepfake, CGI, robotoids, who knows? They were able to keep the Ruth Bader Ginsburg charade going on for a while. But I think that's the outlier. And Neptune in the fourth house is convalescent, especially at this age. And then he's got to deal with Uranus, opposing Mars. That's coming too. I think you're going to see the end of Joe Biden here. It's just a matter of time. And I say within the next 48 to 72 hours, it will be very, very difficult to evade whatever is coming. And then we're going to have to find out what happens next. It's never been a dull moment for 2020. Never been a dull moment. I don't care what you say about this year. It has been just an amazing, bizarre, difficult, strained, catalytic year. And I don't think it's really going to let up. 2021 will have to bring its own challenges. Whoever wins, there'll be its own challenges. So, and the other thing too, and I was talking with Jimmy tonight. The other thing too, you really have to keep your eye on is the extraterrestrial stuff. I am telling you, they don't pick a person like Tucker Carlson to start talking about aliens just randomly. He's got the highest rated show on TV. He's generally regarded to being the most level-headed and quote unquote patriotic and conservative host on television. And now he's talking about extraterrestrials. So one of the things that Jimmy Brent and I batted around, I brought this up. What if they play the UFO card? And the UFO card they play is friendly. Let's say it's a friendly card, okay? And let's say that along with that card is the technology stuff. Okay, we're ready. We are ready to unlock some new technologies in the game script. Whatever they are. It could be, super efficient cold fusion, whatever they are, right? What do you think that would do to this reset, the Klaus Schwabian World Economic Forum reset, that's all based on austerity and the end of novelty, or the end of invention in some ways, because that's what they're talking about. They're going to just slow play everything, make sure people don't have as many resources as they used to have because the earth just can't handle it, right? But what if they play that card, and as a result of that, they completely torpedo the version of the world that the World Economic Forum has in store for us. It's something to think about. And when we get into that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius on the 21st, that's a very interesting time. So I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if they wanted to pull the rug out from Klaus Schwab and these quote-unquote globalists, that is a card that they would play. And that way they could bring out a lot of the technology that they've been sitting on for a long time. And it may not be complete and utter game changers like free energy, but all of a sudden now, these people who want to control innovation are sitting around with their thumbs up their asses. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm throwing that out there as a possibility. Because I think they keep bringing up the extraterrestrial thing, and I don't think they're bringing it up in a way that is adversarial. That's what I think. And I'm not here to push the extraterrestrial agenda. I'm just telling you, if they wanted to somehow have a major break technologically, that's how they would do it. And they would just simply roll out the things that they've had for a long time. And then, we thank our space brothers or whatever, right? So these are very interesting times. Very interesting. And of course, if indeed the Democratic Party is looking as if they're not just going to have to deal with Joe Biden as a failed candidate, but if these connections go deep enough and broad enough, there are a number of different people and characters and players that could come out of this, and it could be real trouble for the Democratic Party in general. And in a lot of ways, that would be sort of the most efficient way. If you were to wanted to take out a rival gang, instead of doing a hit here, a hit here, a hit here, you'd want to do it all at once. And that's kind of what this thing is beginning to look like. Because Steve Bannon is very confident. He is very, very, very confident. He knows what they've got. And I think he knows the potential of where this thing can go. Now, then we have to ask ourselves, is this really in the best interest of having a government that is representative of just kind of one group? Well, that's what they do in England. They have the House of Commons, and if you have, let's say, a Labour Party candidate, then everybody has to be Labour. Or if you have their Conservative Party candidate or PM, everybody has to be conservative. That's how they run it in England. Here we've had the check and balance, theoretically. So, would that be the best for the country? I don't know. I think it's always good to have a few checks and balances along the way. But would it be better if we had one model and one program that could facilitate change efficiently and without a lot of drag on the system? Would that be a better model per se? We don't know. We don't know what that looks like. And often in the past, if we did have that, it would look very monarchical. It would be a plutocracy. And it would be one person who would make those changes. And there would be very little dissent as a result of that. So we're in very interesting territory. And we know that with the Pluto return of the United States, that we are going to go through a major transformation and a major change. And it's going to happen in the next 2 years as we move into 2021 and 2022 when we get that Pluto return. So it is coming. Change is coming. But the biggest change that's coming is inside of you. All right, let me check in with you guys with chat, see where we're at. We got 292 people. All right, that's pretty interesting. Let's see. What do we got here? Let me go back a few. Hey, there's Ivan. What's going on, Ivan? Good to see you. Let me go back. Okay. Carol's here. Hi, Carol. Will people try to stop the riots up to and after the election? So we talked about this last week, and there is the potential for the riots, which I think probably would start on Friday night and go through Saturday and Sunday, to be bad enough so that they would perhaps delay the election. And they don't have to delay the election indefinitely. They could delay the election for a week, because conditions might be difficult for people to go out and vote on election day. Because they may not be able to put out fires. And if you don't think that there will be fires, well, look, we got off pretty lightly in terms of Halloween. I'm not sorry, 4th of July, but the aspects were very different, very, very different, very different than this upcoming Halloween. And if one side feels cornered, they'll pull out all the stops. So let's see. What else do we have here? What about execution for treason? I don't know if we've had anybody publicly executed for treason for a long time. And I don't know if what Joe Biden has done is necessarily treasonous per se, right? It would be connected to graft and corruption. But let's say he was like Jonathan Pollard. That would be treason, as Jonathan Pollard sold secrets to the Israelis. But he wound up going to jail. I think he's out now, if I'm not mistaken. But even Jonathan Pollard, I think the last people that were executed for treason were the Rosenbergs. I think you have to go back to the Rosenbergs. But perhaps if more people were executed for treason, we wouldn't have as much treason. Biden looks like Skeletor, blood doping wearing off. Could be. He's starting to have that kind of Celine Dion kind of breakdown look. Riots are the least of the worries to the deeper issues. Let's see. I agree. We won't see Biden if he gets elected. Just his smile while Harris is in front, and he'll be gone. He will be gone regardless. But whether he gets elected or not, you will not see him. You will not. And if he does get elected, they'll have some kind of a stroke sort of story. I believe that the election will be delayed. Yeah, well, Mercury station on election day. Russians are smart. They just have 10 Putin clones. That's funny. Joe Biden treated Ukraine like his personal fiefdom. He used taxpayers' money meant for Ukraine. Well, he's been doing it for a long time, and he's not alone. I mean, how do you think these people make all their money? Who was it? Susan Rice, I think, was worth $275,000 when she went to Washington to work in the Obama administration. She was like worth $13 million when she left. These people make a shitload of money. A shitload of money. Let's see. One of the Welsh roses. Biden makes me think of the scene in Ghost where the earth opens up and all the evil beings tumble into hell. I'm wondering if people will say enough. So I've been thinking a lot about, I was thinking of the UFO card just tonight. I think we'll see that at some point, no doubt. Why didn't Trump intervene? Well, this has been a bone to pick of mine, Daniel, about Trump not intervening. And first of all, when he declared a state of emergency, the states were allowed to react to whatever or however they saw fit with this so-called virus. And at that point, Trump theoretically could not intervene. However, that said, if civil rights were being violated, and clearly they were, then Trump could have done what other presidents before him have done, whether it was Kennedy, whether it was Johnson, whether it was Nixon, all three of which invoked, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the 14th Amendment, which provided the deputization or the dispensation of the National Guard into states in order to ensure people's civil rights. Well, that could have been done. However, because there was a state of emergency, I'm not sure Trump could have done the 14th Amendment. I'm not sure that was in play. And there are some people who believe that really, at this point in time, it is DHS and FEMA that are actually running the country. And all Trump has to do is to declare the state of emergency over, which he has not done. And if he did that, then there could be intervention. And if he does win, I'm assuming that that would happen. But of course, it's not always correct to assume. But I do have a bone to pick with that, because a lot of people have lost their businesses. A lot of people have had to deal with this bullshit COVID and Corona scenario. The children are really, really suffering. Suicide rates are up. People's health are more at risk, not because of the so-called virus, but because of the lack of things like vitamin D and oxygen and everything that goes along with that. And so the lie has been perpetrated, and this is a very, very important and integral issue. And I think we'll see some clarity around this post-election. And I'm not saying it will resolve itself positively or will not resolve itself with the virus itself being declared over, but we will know and have some clarity moving forward with how this is going to unfold. And if it's going to be a situation where the UN and the WHO say you got to wear the mask, for 2021 or 2022, 2023, that's something we're going to have to deal with as a result of that. I'm not saying we're going to do that. So this is right now, the mask thing is going to be kind of a back burner. You look at Trump's rallies, everybody behind him now is all masked up. He's been doing commercials that are touting how we're in this together, and there's a lot of mask imagery. And I know that he's trying to theoretically, persuade people that he's done the right thing or whatever. But it is an issue for me. It's an issue, and I feel like a lot of people have suffered unduly as a result of this, and especially people in places like Oregon where there were fires set and people lost their property and lost their lives. I feel like it was a really, it was a very, very dangerous and calculated risk in a lot of ways. So, we live in a strange world where it's a mix of illusion and hope, and everybody is just doing not everybody, but I think people in their own way are just doing their best to get through each day, to get to the next day, so that we can get to a point beyond a certain point, so we can see what's sort of, beyond that point and have a glimpse of the event horizon. And I think that's, we all have our own strategies and ways of doing that. I know I have mine, and last week somebody said that I was a decent astrologer, but they wished I wouldn't get into Christian politics around the mask. And I don't get it. I mean, to me, it has nothing to do with Christian politics. It's about, being a slave, really, and being muzzled, and not being able to have an exercise of my own relationship with my breath and my spirit. So it was an interesting kind of comment on the site, and some of you who replied were quite interesting as well in your responses, and I thank you for them. And I try to be understanding, but then it came down to the virtue signal part. Well, why can't you just put a mask on? Because maybe my father needs you to put a mask on. Well, if that's the case, your father's wearing a mask, and he's protected. So why should I put a mask on? This is the same thing with the vaccines. Why should you make me take a vaccine when you're taking the vaccine and supposedly you're safe? But because you're wearing a mask and you have to wear a mask, and you'll take your moral position, you'll throw it onto me, and God damn it, I've got to wear the mask if you've got to wear the mask. And so there's the justification to wearing the mask, which is I'm doing the right thing, or I'm helping other people, the virtue signal, or I'm taking one for the team, or I'm getting out of my own way because it's egotistical not to wear a mask, which is still another version of a virtue signal. Anyway, it's going to be interesting. It'll definitely be interesting. We can count on that. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, like over the last, say, 48 hours, is the Gnostic view of the universe and the Christian view of the universe, not necessarily how it relates to astrology, although that could be an interesting discussion. And I know that there are people that are camped out in kind of either world. Like the world of Gnosticism is very, very, very different than the world of Christianity and vice versa. And in Christianity, there is the relationship with Logos and the ability to understand the nature of the universe through a deductive or philosophical kind of relationship. It's fairly Platonic in some ways. And in the Gnostic tradition, it has very little to do with intellectual understanding and more about the transmission of ecstatic states or the transmission of gnosis. And so there's an immediate kind of switch in the consciousness of the individual. It is not intellectual. It is not an intellectual understanding of God. And I've come to my own realization, understanding that we need both, that the two don't have to necessarily be mutually exclusive, and that they can work together with one another, even if you have to do some interesting math in order to reconcile the cosmologies. But I feel like we need to have both, because in the so-called Christian world, it gives us certain precepts and ways of relating in some ways, right? It gives us the ability to interface with this so-called reality. And the Gnostic tradition isn't really concerned with that at all. What the Gnostic tradition is concerned with is the state of alchemical transformation, and that however you get there is how you get there. And it doesn't always include niceties or social codes or things along those lines. But I feel like we need both in many ways. And in order to get through this time, we have to be able to have a certain amount of lucidity and clarity and be able to share that with people in a way that connects us, right? But because this idea of the truth has become hijacked and watered up, like Ani made a comment that her mother, who has gone through really the hardships of Cuba in the times of Castro, right? She watches CNN and she's become hypnotized by CNN. And there are a number of people who have experienced that. They're in a state of trance-like, a lack of awareness, a trance-like lack of awareness. And so you can come to these people with this idea of the truth, or you can bring facts to the table, and it won't affect them very much, if at all, and they may even resent you for that. But if they were to have an experience of something, an emanation of something that would bypass their rational thinking or their perceptual abilities, then it would be quite interesting, because then they would not be able to create the arguments in their head or the justifications. They would be directly connected with the isness of the experience. So I think that's where we are right now, that we have come to this point where I think a lot of people have refined their blade and their edge with the so-called idea of the truth. And it's even reflective in some ways of the purge of these channels from YouTube. And I don't think we ever want to lose that, because it allows us to disseminate certain things. And it allows us to create kind of a body of evidence based on a certain type of knowledge and contrast. And there's a valuable knowing there. And the next stage is to somehow get to that point where that ecstatic experience comes into play and bypasses the neural pathways of being able to explain something away, right? And I think we're kind of getting close, actually. I think we're kind of getting close, and we're looking at this very interesting time around the 21st of December with the super conjunction, and supposedly, that's when the Mayan calendar really runs out, right? It's also right around the equinox. So I think that's an interesting time. And perhaps there is the potential for a collective moment that bypasses our ability to deny a certain thing, or to explain it away, or to hold on to our position in such a way that it has to anchor us in a reality that gives us some kind of grounding or foundation. And if we do experience that, or we do go to that place, it'll be quite interesting, because it has the potential of bringing the most number of people sort of present simultaneously to the experience as possible. And perhaps the people who have been working diligently to uncover the truth might be actually preparing themselves for that moment in a way so that when it does happen, everything kind of lines up, and they have this aha that, it fits all the work that's been done to this point in time. So don't I would say don't despair and and don't freak out over the fact that all this censorship is taking away these vehicles and these channels to bring awareness to people, because we live in a very profound experience, whether you want to call it a matrix or an omniverse, however you want to describe this thing that we're in. There is, in my estimation, an overarching intelligence that is at work and is at play. And if certain channels are shut down, if certain vehicles of sharing information are shut down, then something else opens up, right? Something else will emerge, and it will come into our experience. And that's what these people who are desperately trying to put a cap on the truth, in the social media network, they don't really understand this. It would really be in their best interest to allow these things to happen and let them get played out, because that energy and that that kind of the potential for transformation will reroute itself in a different way. And when it does, it will be much more permanent. Now, remember, next year when the nodes shift, we're going into, actually it's 2022, true node in Taurus and south node in Scorpio. And it'll be a very, very interesting time. And it will, I believe, really initiate us into a new relationship with the earth. And a lot of the demonic forces and a lot of the sort of the skeletons that are, I think, very much connected to the sign of Scorpio, and the kind of unenlightened sort of grasp for power will really be exposed during that time, and we will exercise those demons during that period. It will happen, and it'll be a very interesting time. Very, very, very interesting. So stick around. There's a lot of really cool things ahead of us. Okay, a lot of cool things, and we're not out of the woods by any stretch. We're not out of the woods by any stretch. But I also do want to share that there are other things happening. And when they do shut these things down, and when they do say, well, you're not going to have this, you're not going to have that, it's, I think, really damning, because we need those things. But remember, man, that water will find another way to come out. And it will come out. And when it does, the people that have damned those tributaries, well, literally and figuratively damn those tributaries, they'll see what they've helped create, and it will be way more profound in a lot of ways. All right, where are we at? Where are we at? Phoenix, I hope so, because that's the state of affairs are redundant and boring, and a boring reset would be great. Water always finds a way, trying to suppress. You're absolutely right. You're right. So if they try to do what they're doing, it's going to come out in another direction. And everybody's trying to do this rationally and say, see, this is the, and when it does kind of reemerge, it won't be as rational. It will reemerge as something very different. And I think perhaps more interesting in some ways. But a monad loses fascination. Put your hand on a hot stove, you realize you're in a body that can be damaged and connected to a physical world. Well, I think that's an interesting comment. It's a very interesting comment, because there are people who have done things like that and they have not suffered any damage, right? I'm not saying that that's not true, Faith, but there are people who've done things like that. And there are people who've made a life of doing things that are extremely, potentially quite dangerous, and transcending that danger. And some of them are charlatans and magicians, and other people have actually learned how to do certain things. So we have to live in the world and be of it, and yet there's also this potential for an imminent experience to be a part of our lives. How amazing it would be to see a windfall of truth come out. I cry with tears of joy, especially as I watch brainwash them prepare their entire view of reality. Well, these people, there's a lot of really damaged people, really, really damaged people, and a lot of damaged relationships. And I'm not sure how these things can be really repaired or fixed. God, I just got the craving for like an East Coast pizza right now. It like just jumped into my head. Like I really was I just had this moment of I think it was like 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago. I was in a hotel room. It was in October. I was in a hotel room outside the Philadelphia airport, and I was watching Sunday Night Football, and I ordered a pizza delivered to the hotel room. It was so good. I don't know why that came in my head right now. Okay, let's see. I'm not saying the public don't have souls. Well, we've gotten into this before. I don't think everybody, I don't know. I don't think everybody has a soul. I'm I don't think they do. Not in the way that we understand it. Not in the way that we understand it. That doesn't mean that they couldn't have an imminent experience, in which case maybe they would move from being an NPC, or maybe they would move from being kind of this vessel of the Matrix into actually fully incarnating. Wouldn't that be great? Let's see, what else do we have? Let's see. Podcasts are a good option. Multiverse. A lot of the 20 plus years to integrate this info. We were lucky. Yep, that's true. Mario says, I agree, Robert. We must each create a soul if we can. That's interesting. Thanks. Now we have to get a New York pizza. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Here, let's do this. Let's do this. You guys are gonna hate me now. You're gonna hate me. You're just gonna hate me. All right, hold on. Hold on. What do we got? I don't want it home, man. No, I don't want. Don't show me how to make a delicious New York style pizza. I just want to see the damn pizza. All right, here we go. The secrets behind. We're only at Joe's Pizza right now. This is Joe's Pizza. I have to do this. Let's just all together. Let's just share a New York pizza moment. Right here. From 2014, a different universe. Mmm. Cheesy. Oh, yeah.
My name's Sal Vitale.
My name is Joe Pozzoli, and I'm the pizza man. When I was a kid, I used to go to school in Italy, right? When I come out of school, there's a pizza place, no man, this guy was very old. I was there every day. I went back there after 5 years, right? No pizza guy says, I'm making pizzas. He looked at me and says, you? I said, yeah. He says, I knew you were going to do that. If I was there every day, I was fascinated to see the guy make it. I opened in 1957. I sold a slice for 10 cents, 5 cents for Coca-Cola. When I opened the cone over there about 40 years ago, I sold 35 cents.
We use the best stuff. We don't
Quality,
skimp out quality.
Gotta buy quality.
People try to cut corners, try to make a few extra dollars.
And when you do pizza, you gotta have a little feeling, you know what I mean? You gotta feel what you're doing, you know what I mean? A lot, and then you do good. I'm doing the same thing, so I don't see why I should change them.
Even me, I'm a little younger, and I try to come up with like a little idea here. Don't touch nothing. Don't touch nothing.
The only thing when I was younger,
yeah.
I could eat all pizza when I was young.
I come in when I was younger on the weekends. I used to play on the register. I used to go in the back. I've been born into pizza. And on a good day, we sell a few hundred pies. We don't really keep count, but it's up there. I don't know why, but they all come here all the time. Like you have celebrities, Leonardo DiCaprio, all them. Maybe every month, 2 months, they should.
When they're in New York, they come.
When they're in New York, they always come late night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. A lot of people have been asking us, when are you going to open a location on the east side, east side, east side? We always, we had enough over here. Like, this place is always busy. we finally, I don't know how we convinced them, you know, because at first it was like, this is the original, we'll never open anywhere. That's it. You want pizza, come here.
Well,
Now,
not too many, because I like to be in there all of it, you know what I mean? I do my 7 days, but
7 days
you know, you get more places, you got to be different places.
77 years old, comes in the snow every day. You want to open a good store, you put your family in there, you do it yourself. That's the only
And
way.
you got to feel what you do. You
Yeah.
got to have art to what you do. Your energy, you got to feel it. You're in there.
All of our guys that are working here, they're over 10, 12, some of them 20 years working with us. We never change guys, never. Almost as long as I've been born. All my guys in my night shift know me since I was 4 or 5 years old, you know?
Joe, you like working with your grandson here?
Oh, yeah, he's a good guy. Look at this. The power.
I'm turning into a mini him now. I spent so much time with him.
That's
You know what I
that's
mean?
the power. That's good.
All right, tonight's Sunday Night AstroLive, brought to you by Joe's Pizza in Brooklyn, New York. What does a pizza have to do with astrology? Well, it's a wheel, and so is the chart. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's presentation, tonight's show. I am going to do some more stuff with Rhodesia. I'm going to do that tomorrow on 15 Minutes of Flame. But I just wanted to leave you with a little bit of New York style pizza and the beautiful feeling of 2 generations, 3 generations, creating family business. It's almost like a part of our history beamed from another time. All right, what do we have here? A full discussion of souls and soul and race is definitely one for BitChute. We could do that one. Banning Q is tantamount to banning books and information. Info exchange is a must. It's the slaughter of the Albigensians. That's what it was. Slaughter of the Albigensians. I miss the pizza. Oh, yes. Real pizza. Yeah. I just had to share that. I had to share that for the Crimmies. All right. I'm out of here. Okay. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart as simple as possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. I will be back tomorrow. 15 Minutes of Flame. Going to hit it hard. Of course, I'm sure there's going to be plenty to talk about. I'm going to pick up on the Rhodesia thread. I'm going to do some astrology about Rhodesia tomorrow. So if you are interested in astrology, it's going to be there. And we're going to look at the chart for Rhodesia and independence, UDI. We're going to look at Adam Smith's chart. We'll check out Robert Mugabe, Josh Nakomo, try to put it all together. It's a very complicated subject, but I think it's really worth following up on from Friday. But tonight, we just had to go full astrology and all in on Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, and this kind of great time that we're living in. All right? I am still doing readings. You can find me at robertphoenix.com. So bye for now. Y'all. And I'll catch you on the rebound tomorrow morning, 15 Minutes of Flame. Hope to see you there. Bye for now. Stone Roses. Yeah.